Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we have Mr. Charles Tan, the founder and also the person behind copyandproperty.com, one of the famous websites that actually talks about property and investments in Malaysia. So welcome. Thank you so much for coming, Charles.
Hey, thank you for inviting me, Ernest.
We've known each other for some years now, Charles, and I've always actually really appreciated the fact that when you try to break down property investments into bite-sized, easily understood concepts for the layman on the street to understand. Can I just ask, how did you start with concepts that you made it so simple for people to grasp? How do you start this journey?
Yeah, I think one of the most important fact that I myself is from the working professional, and I myself, when I first bought my first apartment, it took me like 6 months to buy my first apartment, because at that time, there were no investment blogs, there were no property blogs. In fact, the only property book that I read was 2 years after I bought my first property. That was my first time I read a property investment book, right, by Azizi Ali. But after that, I realized that property investment is easy to understand if you try to read a little bit more. And if you look back historically, you will realize that property investment is a very natural hedge against inflation. Many people think of property investment as for them to earn big money. Big money aside, it happened a couple of times, but property price basically increased in conjunction with the salary increment. If your salary does not go up, regardless of whether the money value comes down or whatever, if your salary goes up, you'll be able to afford a slightly higher price property. And as your salary keeps going up, you will upgrade to a bigger property. And this is how the property investment will come about. It is a very natural hedge against inflation. If anything, what you gain from buying a property is that the value of your money is not lost. After 10 years, after 20 years, it will still be there. Just like they always love to ask me, hey Charles, you know all these affordable homes that they are selling, it is 300,000 today. If 10 years later or 20 years later, do you think the 300,000 will increase or not? My answer is very simple. Do not look at Malaysia as the world. Look at the advanced property market as the world. Everywhere in the world, the first issue with property investment is that people do not buy. But for people who have bought, they will realize that after 10 years, after 20 years, I don't lose money. I may not gain a lot of money, I may not become a multi-millionaire, but the property price, I do not lose money. And therefore, my money that I invested has now either balanced out or has increased in value, and therefore I have capital appreciation. So this is a part which very important for everyone to understand. Yeah.
Well done. Very easily to understand, and it's actually a good dose of information for us to start our property journey as well. But I just want to backtrack a little bit, Charles. Before you first bought your first property, or before you bought your first property, can I ask you, how long have you been working prior to that moment when you bought?
Oh, I have been working for about 5 years.
So during these 5 years, do you already have the inclination of wanting to buy, or was the concept of buying something that you decided very...
Yeah, unfortunately, for the 5 years that I've worked, I have not really saved a lot of money towards a property investment. The only reason why I was forced to buy was because I was about to get married. And my father-in-law said, it's best to stay at your home rather than a rented home. That was the reason why I started to buy the property. But if I did not, then I think I would not have bought my second, and I would not bought my third, and so on and so forth. So that first property was a catalyst, if you want to say, yeah.
What was your concept of debt at that point in time before you bought your first one? What was your biggest debt that you had before signing your loan agreement?
Unfortunately, me, just like any other working professional, at that time, my concept of debt is buying something that I like and paying for it via installment. That is my concept of debt, right? So it might be a smartphone, it might be a very nice electronics products. Yeah, generally, if I could not afford it with my salary at that time, I would put it on installment. That was my thinking about that. Nothing to do with investment, right? To me, that is just that. But after I bought my first property and after I read some property books, I realized that even in debts, there are good ones and there are bad ones, right? So the bad debts are those which after you spend and after you enjoy, you gain nothing else from it. Imagine even a smartphone, for example. Yeah, so your whole office is so excited with your new smartphone. Okay, after 1 week, no one is excited anymore. But your installment will still last for the next 12 months. Yeah. But however, if it's a good debt, that means you use it to buy an investment, for example. Now, this debt is definitely needed because even if you look at the companies with very huge reserve, actually, if you look at how the company expands, they will still carry on debt because this debt is a good debt. Not many companies would use their reserve because the reserve is there for a purpose. It is for uncertain times that the reserves will be used. It is not just solely for business expansion. Yeah, so that is definitely needed, whether you are a working professional, whether you are an organization looking to expand. Yeah.
So when you decided to go into debt to buy your first property, maybe in this particular case, buying it was not for investment, but it was because you wanted to get married and you had to go stay in your own place. When you bought it, can I ask you about your emotions at the point in time, after signing the SPA and after signing the loan agreement, then 30 days later, the installment kicks in. How was that feeling for you? Was that something that you anticipated? Was that something that you were prepared for? Or was that something that you had heartbeats palpitating and things like that?
Yeah, so what the first property did to me was that all those expenses that I have are all gone already. I no longer carry new debts because I could not carry new debts. My money is now tied to a forced savings, which is my home, right? So what has happened is that now I actually have started a forced savings plan, which is good for me because otherwise I would have paid my rental anyway. And I would have spent the money anyway to buy some other stuff. But yeah, after buying the first property, then I realized I had forced savings. And what has happened after that, just 4 years after that, is even better. Because I realized, because I was forced to save and forced to reduce all the unnecessary expenses, I have extra money for a second property. And that was when I upgraded to a much bigger condo, and then my first apartment, I rented it out. Yeah, and that was how my property investment actually started, from forced savings to upgrade, and then now I have a rental property.
Can I backtrack a bit? When you decided to upgrade, what information did you use to determine where, how much more you can afford? How do you deal with the new debt? And if you got off your previous property, if I don't rent it out, what happens? I'm just trying to give our listeners a sense whereby I'm just thinking of my first property. I can't even think of my first. You're talking about the second one already. How? So it's almost like going swimming in a cold water. No, on a cold day, you're like, hey, cold, it's cold. But if you don't jump in, you always feel cold. So what took you to that threshold? Okay, time for number 2. What happened?
Yeah. So the number 2 property actually took a long time. Yeah, it took probably 2 or 3 months for consideration because, like you mentioned, actually, both my wife and I were worried that we will go bankrupt, especially if the first property couldn't be rented out. Okay. But actually, we did some research and we realized that first apartment, no issues in it being rented out. Because when we asked the agents about the prices, about is it easy to rent out, actually all the answers were positive. Plus, the apartment was very near to the industrial area, which means that the working professionals would definitely have to stay somewhere nearby. Yeah, so this is one of the, it's a risk management. That there's no guarantee that I will be able to rent out. But one more thing that I have thought about is that because we will be upgrading, therefore all the things that we have bought, all the renovations that we have done, we are not going to remove anyway. Which means that worst comes to worst, even if I were to rent out at a unfurnished rate, but my unit is fully furnished, I seriously don't think there's any issue to rent it out. So we came in with that kind of understanding, and we proceeded to buy the upgrade property. And of course, the consideration is always, can we pay or not if we do not have the rental? We calculated, basic idea is, yes, we can afford it, but we just have to tighten our expenses even further. Perhaps the yearly holidays, we don't go so far. We just do it within Malaysia. Perhaps the thought that we want to go for a holiday in Malaysia every quarter, perhaps it becomes a half-yearly affair, right? And of course, my wife is from Sabah, so perhaps the thought of going back to Sabah for 2 times a year, maybe we can reduce it to 1 time. So all that actually came into consideration. And in fact, even the thinking about the car, we realized, both our cars are still new. There's actually no need to change the car. So all that came into consideration, and when everything is matched, we decided to proceed with it. Yeah, because at that time, the second property, which is a condo, it was very attractively priced. So we bought the unit in 2007, very attractively priced, and it comes with 2 car parks, and it's about 70% bigger than my current unit. So yeah, definitely it's an upgrade for us. So we moved. Yeah, of course, we also anticipated that we are starting a family, so we need a bigger unit rather than a 700 square feet. Yeah.
Excellent. Actually, you gave me 2 very good insights there, Charles. Number 1 is never make a decision without your wife getting involved. Because if you get into a decision that you made unilaterally, and if the other party doesn't quite agree to it, maybe your selection may have to be rescinded. And the other
took 3 months.
3 months to convince her, or 3 months for her to convince you?
3 months for us to convince us.
Okay. Actually, the other thing that's also interesting, Charles, is this: your wife is also agreeable to do this. Because the reason why I'm saying that is because sometimes when you have spouses that have different points of view in terms of money management, this could be also difficult. When one wants to be a saver, wants to just keep on holding cash, and the other one says, let's grow wealth in a different way. So that conversation needs to happen. So very good.
So for us, it's a natural progress, because when my wife saw the new condo, my wife also fell in love with the condo. So it is quite an easy choice. If it's a investment, for example, so we have our first home and then we want to talk about investment, I think it will take even longer for me to convince her, or for us to convince ourselves. But because it's an upgrade, therefore it's much easier, because we are telling ourselves that we are going to stay in a much better place. Yeah, so that is one of the key things.
Was this a brand new unit, or was it a subsale unit for the second property?
Brand new unit. The first property was a subsale. The second property was a brand new unit.
Okay. Charles, I want to fast forward a little bit, and now that you've traversed already through your property journey, and you're trying to also share your knowledge and your experience with the other people who are subscribers to Copy and Property, and also in your many talks that you currently do, which I'm also an avid subscriber and I'm also a student of yours. I wanted to ask you with regard to what you see this particular situation that we are facing right now. Prior to 2020 happening, we already saw some economic headwinds. We also saw some difficulties in terms of the economies of the world, with politically the US and China issues that are happening, and we are all the surrounding nations looking at these 2 big giants. So we were already going into that softening, and then what happened in our politics here in Malaysia, and also now with COVID. Charles, money on table right now. What do you think of the situation, and are you buying, or are you saying now is not the time?
Yeah, so if you look at the property market all the way back from, let's say, 2009, when it really started to move upwards, until all the way to 2012, which was towards the peak. And then from 2013 until 2017, actually the market has been on a downtrend, property transaction-wise. In 2018, Perhaps 2017 was already the bottom. Therefore, 2018 saw a very small increase in transaction, which means that if you want to have the to understand what happened, perhaps you can put the term recovery to the property transaction in 2018. In 2019, however, the first 2 quarters saw a reduction in property demand actually. It was only in the final 2 quarters, which was due to the effects of home ownership campaign, that in 2019, we also saw an increase, probably about 4%, right? Higher than 2018. So if you put a graph, right, it went down and then 2018 was up and 2019 was up again, which means that recovery has technically started. However, COVID-19 has arrived. Right? So what has happened right now is that there are uncertainty. We do not know when the vaccine will be ready, and we do not even know what will happen, because no country in the world knows what will happen with the normalization. So they are all talking about the new norm. Actually, I think it's not the new norm. I think it's more like a normalization. How do we go back towards living our normal life with COVID-19 in our midst? Right? Because if there's no vaccine, COVID-19 will always be in our midst. And it cannot be that we don't have any economic activity until COVID-19 is defeated. I think if we stay at home until then, there's nothing to save, right? Don't talk about life. There's nothing to save. The economy will already be collapsed all over the world. So what happened is that normalization is how we live continuously with economic activity, with whatever we do, with the businesses amidst COVID-19 surrounding us, right? So this is something which will happen. Now, when we look at this word called normalization, it meant that there is a potential for recovery. It is not growth, right? Many people think recovery means growth. Actually, recovery just means going back towards the previous growth number that we were seeing. So previously we were anticipating 2020 to be around 4.5% or 4.8%, like our ex-finance minister said, right? But today, now, Ben Negara is saying probably -2, or at best is positive, small positive, right? For 2020. However, if you look at how all these projections for 2021 has been, you will notice that everyone is anticipating a growth number. So it's no longer a negative number for 2021. What this tells you is that everyone is thinking the normalization would start to happen already. No one is thinking that all this lockdown will be locked down until the end of the year or until next year or until the vaccine is found. Everyone does their calculation based on normalization, right? So the economy starts to reopen, people start to get to work, some people will get infected, they will have retreated, while all of us continue to wait for the vaccine to be found, right? If it is to be found like end of this year or middle of next year. But all this will continue to happen, which also tells us that if I need to get married, I will still get married. If I intend to get divorced, I will still get divorced. If my baby is on the way, I will still be having a baby on the way. And if the businesses continue to open, that means the hiring of people will have to also continue to happen, right? Unless we are talking about a total collapse of the world economy. Otherwise, if you are talking about normalization, that means the economy will be on the road to recovery. And if you look at that recovery, normalization, that means the property demand will find its way back, because we will still need a roof over our head. It's not like because of COVID-19, therefore I won't buy a house anymore. So where do you want to stay? It's not like because of COVID-19, no one graduates from universities anymore. Okay, if no one graduates from university, no one moves to the Klang Valley to work, yeah, probably the demand will stop. But people are still graduating, people are still studying, right? So all these are still continuously happening, which means that the demand, not just for property, the demand for handphones will be back, the demand for cars will slowly be back. I mean, yeah, this is part of normalization. But the the speed that it will come back, that is something which everyone will have to just forecast or just estimate. I don't think there's anyone who knows what will be the actual number. Yeah, but the demand for property, yeah, definitely is still intact unless everything stops, right? You don't get married, you don't have baby, you don't graduate. Yeah, otherwise it will still happen.